The recent developments in the EV market have not been particularly good for Ford. This giant in the automotive world has thrown all the eggs into one basket and focused too much on EVs. Ford CEO Jim Farley thought that everyone would jump on the EV bandwagon and they would sell millions of these vehicles, which did not happen. So if you want to learn more about the drama, stay with us while we learn the reasons why Ford faces its biggest EV disaster yet, and it's just getting started. Reason number 8, low demand for EVs. When it comes to EVs, a few years back, everyone thought that people would immediately get themselves an electric car or truck. But the reality is much different, at least in the US. People are cautious and really pay attention to where they spend their money. In recent times, people have become more aware of the downsides of electric cars. The infrastructure is pretty bad and the batteries drain very fast, especially when it comes to trucks such as the F150 Lightning. You add more load to these trucks and they will deplete the range, making them unusable for towing and payload. This, along with the high price tag of the Lightning, caused buyers to lose interest in this pickup truck and not want to purchase these models. So Ford had to slash prices substantially to make customers interested. But this also doesn't help a lot. The Ford F150 Lightning is still a very unattractive option for buyers. Ford reportedly only managed to sell 39% of the inventory in the first 30 days compared to 70% in the previous year. And this situation will stay pretty much the same because the performance of the truck cannot change. This is a very unattractive purchase for people who really need trucks for towing and payload duties. And the Mach-E is not much different. Buyers do not particularly like this model and choose a different model instead. Reason number 7, Ford fires workers. Back in October 2023, Ford fired about 700 workers who were working on the Ford F-150 Lightning production lines. These layoffs had to be done in order for Ford not to go bankrupt. So they fired one of the 3 shifts at their Rouge Electric Vehicle Center located in Dearborn, Michigan. The production of the Lightning is now in 2 shifts, and reportedly, this will reduce even more. More people are expected to be fired in the upcoming months if the sales of EVs do not improve. Nobody wants to get fired, but in some cases, this has to be done because Ford can lose some serious money if they keep making these trucks in great numbers without any sales. What is good though is that these trained workers will not find it difficult to get a job in some of the Ford competitors. Nowadays, everyone is looking for trained workers who can fit in immediately, so finding a job when you have skills is not as difficult as it was in the past. Reason number 6, Ford lost $4.5 billion. Another big news when it comes to EVs and Ford is that Ford lost about $4.5 billion in 2023 alone on electric cars. This is $2.4 billion more compared to Ford's losses in 2022, when they lost $2.1 billion. And as you can see, losses keep piling up. Ford predicted to lose about $3 billion in 2023, and they managed to lose $4.5 billion, which is $1.5 billion more compared to the estimations of the company. These losses are not attributed only to poor sales, but because of the substantial investments that Ford made in this EV segment. They invested heavily in building electric powertrains and batteries. This is why their losses are so high. The poor sales are only making things get a lot worse than expected. This is still pretty bad considering the fact that Ford planned to make EVs mainstream by 2026. As Ford CEO said, the near-term pace of EV adoption will be a little slower than expected, meaning that he still believes in his idea of making EVs the mainstream vehicles. And we're sad to tell him that under these circumstances and in this market, it is impossible. People are simply not interested in electric cars. So the sooner he comes to the idea that EVs are not the future, the better it'll be for Ford, and they might avoid ending up bankrupt. And for those who don't know, Ford, along with Tesla, are the 2 automakers that never went bankrupt in the US. But if the CEO is still convinced in the EV future, we can expect that Ford will break this record as well and become the newest bankrupt automaker in the US. What is good for Ford is that their regular models are generating a lot of profits, and in the second quarter, the revenue was $45 billion, from which $1.9 billion was a net income, which will allow the CEO, Jim Farley, to keep investing in his EV fantasies. Reason number 5, Ford scales back $12 billion in EV investment. Buyers are becoming more and more cautious about where they invest their hard-earned money. EVs are not one of those things that buyers nowadays are focused on spending their money on. So because of the lack of interest from buyers, Ford decided to cut investments into EVs. As Ford said, they scaled back investment. This was a $12 billion investment that included major investments in EV technology and one large factory for EV batteries. This factory should have been located in Kentucky. According to Ford, they delayed the $12 billion investment, but since there is no demand for their EVs, they will be highly unlikely to move with the investment forward, unless they want to go bankrupt and lose billions in the process. So we think that Ford will learn their lesson from this and invest their money into creating hybrid vehicles or EREV models, just like Ram is doing with its new Ram Charger, where they use the internal combustion engine as a generator of electricity. This approach solves one of the biggest problems that the F-150 Lightning has, which is battery drain under heavy load. But time will tell what will happen in the near future. Reason number 4, Ford EVs piling up on dealer lots. And as we've noted previously, Ford EVs keep piling up on dealers' lots across the country. The EVs made by Ford have the longest amount of time spent on the lot before being sold. Ford's ambitions are simply outpacing the demand for these vehicles, and dealers cannot manage to sell as much as Ford can produce. Just for reference, the dealers managed to sell about 87% of their Mach-E inventory in 2022 in 30 days, compared to 27.7% in the same period in 2023. So this is a massive 50% difference. The demand is much lower than it was in 2023, and this is becoming a real problem. The Ford F-150 Lightning is no different. In fact, it is much worse compared to the Mach-E, since this model is not very attractive to buyers. So in 2022, the dealers managed to sell 70% of the F-150 Lightning models in 30 days, while in 2023, they only managed to sell 39%. And as you can see, this is a total nightmare for Ford. They should stop manufacturing these vehicles unless they want to lose more and more money in the process. Reason number 3, dealers don't want EVs. But that's not all. Dealers also protest against EVs. Dealers across the country simply do not like to have Ford EVs in their inventories. One dealer said that Ford has a real problem on their hands based on the wrong bets they made. He added that he had Lightnings and Mach-E models in stock more than he ever had before. His dealership is full of unsold EVs. Ford gives its dealers monthly allocations based on dealers' needs and specific market demands. However, the EV allocation has been a point of discussion among Ford dealers, who accused Ford of breaking the franchise laws. According to a different dealer, the production is exceeding the demand. They had to decline the allocation of EVs, both for F-150 Lightning and Mach-E models, because they were not able to sell the existing models. So overall, many dealers across the country are simply frustrated with Ford and how they tackle the problem of EVs piling up on lots. Reason number 2, new contract with workers makes Ford EVs more expensive. Many of you have probably heard about the strike of the United Auto Workers, which requested a serious increase in labor-related expenses. These demands have hit Ford quite a lot because the higher worker demands mean that they will need to significantly increase production expenses. This affects the profitability of Ford as a company. Higher worker wages means that this would increase the overall cost of producing the EVs. So for the agreed contract between Ford and the workers, the company expects the vehicle price to add between $850 and $900 in labor alone. This is not too significant, but it is still a big hit for Ford in this crisis that it has. Ford needs to manage their money pretty carefully unless they want to burn themselves and end up bankrupt. Reason number 1, Ford cuts down prices of the F-150 Lightning. With the demand for the F-150 declining and a complete lack of interest among buyers, Ford decided to reduce the price of their truck to almost $10,000. So in October, the price dropped from $59,974 to $49,995. This is a massive discount because Ford wants to get rid of their Lightning stocks as soon as possible, even though it loses money on these vehicles. And as the crisis becomes bigger, more price cuts are expected in 2024. So the price for a new Lightning can come as low as $45,000, according to some industry experts that are into the situation. Overall, things do not seem good for Ford, and things are going to be much more aggravating in the near future if they don't stop making these EVs.